You still have her inside you. She is still there. Even if she lives thousands of miles away, her body is buried, and you haven't talked to her in decades. Not just in your memories, but in the way your mind is built. Carl Jung warned about the mother complex, which is the most feared and most important force in our lives. Not just the woman herself, but also the mental picture she left behind and the emotional mark she made. A force that you can't see that affects the decisions you make, the way you speak, the people you deal with, and even the story you tell yourself. Jung called this the shadow mother. You put on a caring face for the world, but inside you there are unmet needs, unspoken demands, and pain from your family history. The sad truth is that you won't be fully better until you face her. Not your mother on the outside, but the one who still lives inside you. A lot of people see this land as holy and scary. Jung said, nothing has a stronger psychological effect on their environment, and especially on their children, than the unlived life of the parent. If you carry your mother's pain, shame, silence, or sorrow, you're living someone else's life. You start to live as her shadow, her guardian, and her extension, and your soul starts to fade. No one is to blame for this. Instead, it's a call to return to yourself, to take back the parts of you that were never cared for, to honor the grief your inner child was never allowed to feel, and to let go of the weight you were never meant to carry. We are not blaming anyone in this investigation. In the deepest parts of your mind, we are lighting lights. Because you can't really be free if you hate your mother. You have to face your mother within you. Beyond heartbreak and the ego, this movie will take you on a journey into the forbidden parts of your mind. It will show you the alchemical process of death and rebirth that starts when you finally decide to let her go. You'll understand why your healing has been held up, how the mother wound has shaped who you are, and how Jung's deep lessons can help you not only stay alive, but also take control of your life. You are free to stop being a child. This is the simple but not easy fact. It's okay for you to stop carrying someone else's pain. You can change the story, and it starts with a scary act of bravery, facing your mother in your mind. Let's start. What the mother archetype does in the shared unconscious. Jungian psychology says that the mother figure is not just the woman who gave birth to us. She has a very important place in the architecture of the collective unconscious. She is a timeless, transpersonal picture that is written into everyone's soul. Jung thought that the mother was first and foremost an archetype, which is a universal psychic pattern that is passed down rather than made up. He saw this pattern in dreams, myths, and human relationships. She is not just personal, she will always be there. As an icon, the mother is both the life giver and the life eater, the nurturer and the smotherer. Jung called this the paradox of the great mother. This picture is older than society and stands for both safety and danger, creation and destruction, comfort and engulfment. This archetype is not tied to who your actual mother was in the past. It lives below it. It can be found in religious symbols, natural images, myths, and even the earth herself. The mother is the one who feeds you and the one who says she will eat you. For people who still have scars from their mothers, this archetype becomes linked to their own trauma. Jung warned that when we mix up the personal mother with the archetypal mother, we get lost in our minds and end up reliving painful parts of our childhood through adult relationships. We want to be cared for, but are afraid of being close, and we want acceptance, but are afraid of being turned down. When the pattern is broken up and not put back together, it causes psychological distortion. In dreams, the mother may show up as a kind defender or a scary monster that eats people. She is both Demeter and Kali in mythology. She is also Mary in media. Jung called this dual nature of the mother archetype, good and evil, maker and destroyer, holy and profane, the mother archetype. We break up when our minds hold on to one side while ignoring the other. If you praise the mother, you ignore her flaws. If you criticize her, you turn away from her light. In either case, we project our inner wounds onto partners, peers, bosses, spiritual teachers, or anyone else who carries the weight of the mother. This is why a lot of people are stuck. The mother wound can't really heal at the surface level. Jung stressed that we need to go beyond our own problems and look at things in a symbolic way. When we only remember our mother's neglect, anger, and control as a kid, we stay stuck in the ego story. But when we see her as a vessel for old forces, we can change deeply because we realize that our pain is not just our own, it is archetypal. It was Jung who said, "The greatest burden a child must bear is the unlived life of the parents." And this unlived life is often passed down through the mother, in the form of her shame, silence, and grief. The mother complex starts when a child sees his or her mother's mental state not as a memory, but as a reflection. As a child, you might think, "I am not worthy of love." Or, as a child whose mother might think, "I am not allowed to be separate, to be free." These voices don't go away as you get older. They become your inner monologue and tell you how to see your worth, your body, your voice, your ability to love, belong, and thrive. If these inner images aren't brought to light, the person will unknowingly look for resolution outside of themselves, whether it's in a relationship, at work, or by spiritual bypassing. But the root stays the same. It feels like the wound is still telling you, you are not enough. Jung taught that the mother wound is not just a personal tragedy, but a psychic pattern that is passed down through generations, like emotional DNA. Unknowingly, mothers pass on their own pain, repression, and feeling of being cut off from the feminine spirit to their children. Unless they are woken up, the children carry on the story until someone, maybe you, has the guts to face the mother figure inside them and say, "This story ends with me." Jung thought that healing wasn't about changing the mother, but about changing how you relate to your inner mother, which is made up of all the thoughts, feelings, memories, and images that live deep inside you. This work is also very important and not small. This is because you can't really change until you face this inner picture. Earth is also the mother. She is nature. She is what we call the unconscious. If we don't connect with the mother inside us, we don't connect with nature, our bodies, our instincts, or the mystery of the unknown. We're scared of the dark. We're afraid to feel. We connect too much with what is logical, masculine, and in control. And when we do that, we lose the soul's depth. It costs a lot to stay blind to the archetypal mother. Constant anxiety, unresolved sadness, relationship problems, creative blocks, spiritual emptiness, and a feeling that you don't belong to yourself. Jung saw this as a movement away from ancestral roots, the feminine depths, and the great mother, who gives birth to both bodies and minds. That being said, can you see your mother not only as the person who hurt you, but also as a way into the ancient mental forces that shaped her? Are you able to see the pattern that's moving through her and you? Can you hold her flaws and your pain without needing to blame her or look up to her? It's not about forgiveness. It's about freedom, because you will keep going around in circles until you clearly see the mother picture as both mother and mirror. Healing will stay on the surface, and understanding won't go deep into the unconscious. But when you see the mother figure as she really is, huge, mysterious, and contradictory, you stop looking for love in her shadow. You go back to the beginning. You finally start to become yourself, the shadow mother, and being locked up in your mind. In Jungian psychology, the shadow mother is one of the inner forces that people fear and don't understand. She is not the mother who protects, feeds, or leads like the nurturing part of the maternal archetype. She is the one who eats. She shows up as the force that clings, suffocates, manipulates, and stops the soul's growth in dreams, myths, and the quiet sadness of adulthood. Jung noticed that this eating part is not a strange thing. It is an essential part of the pattern itself. The Great Mother both gives birth and eats. She makes and holds back. This part of ourselves can become a mental prison that the ego can't get out of if we don't face it knowingly. In mythology, the shadow mother shows up as gods who won't let go of their children, dragons who protect holy treasures, and queens who eat their own children. In terms of psychology, she shows up when mother energy goes beyond what it's supposed to do, when love turns into control, when protection turns into possessiveness, and when care hides dependence. The child doesn't feel held at these times. Instead, they feel eaten. Even so, The betrayal is often missed because the energy is wrapped in maternal words, like, "I just want what's best for you." The soul falls inward and quietly takes in the thought, "My freedom is abandonment. My autonomy is betrayal." Jung said, "This force rarely enters consciousness in obvious ways. Its grip is subtle, hidden beneath layers of conditioning and inherited guilt. It might show up as crushing self-doubt as an adult, a voice inside your head that keeps repeating the mother's words. It could show up as not feeling safe when you're on your own, constantly worrying about letting people down, or an unconscious desire for love partners who control, diminish, or suffocate, all of which are emotional terrains that are similar to the mother wound. It is the guilt that comes up when you try to set limits, tell the truth, or leave a bad situation. You are ungrateful. You are bad. You are selfish, the ghost mother says in a low voice. Jung warned against this state of mind called psychological infantilization, in which the ego stays small and dependent, emotionally attached to the mother's demands even though the body is grown up. There is no way to get rid of her voice in your head before you talk, act, or even dare to live. You can move cities, change your name, or even live across oceans. It's not about distance. It's about how the energies are linked. The ego is still like a kid in a mother's arms, afraid to go against her. Jung said that the mind would rather believe in hell than in heaven. And the shadow mother is that hell, familiar, dependable, and comforting in a false way. People stay in bad relationships, not because they want to suffer, but because pain keeps the psychic bond strong. Pain turns into love. Self-betrayal turns into love. People will keep creating the same situations as before because they think they are free to choose. But in reality, they're playing out the myth of the mother who eats her children. What is the most powerful thing a mother can use? Not the healthy guilt that comes from knowing you did something wrong, but a primordial guilt, an irrational fear that is split as to die that you got from your parents. Jung called this the psychic leash, which is made not from reason, but from basic fear. I'm bad if I walk away. I am betraying her if I become myself. This shame is very old. It talks about the basic fear of being sent away, the fear of losing the thing that holds life itself. Many people stay frozen under its weight, destroying happiness, hiding the truth, and giving up at the first sign of self-assertion. In a strange way, Jung taught that the shadow mother is not just the guardian. She is also the guardian of the soul, like a dragon watching over the gold. You have to face her to get your name back. The pain she causes isn't pointless. It's the start of something. In myth, the hero has to face her, not to kill her, but to get back what she has taken away. The freedom to live, feel, create, and choose. Integration, not destruction, is what needs to be done. Jung suggested that to do this, you should use your active imagination and have a mindful conversation with the mother that eats you inside. You picture her. You talk to her. You show the anger, sadness, and humiliation. You let the child who was left behind talk. You meet an archetypal force that has been hurt by generations of fear, shame, and unfulfilled desire. It's not evil. Something changes when this process is done honestly. The mother loses her hold, and the inner child starts to stand up. Mind starts to remember that it is its own thing. This meeting is a death and rebirth in the mind. The dependent child dies, and the independent adult is born. Jung said that this phase is often followed by sadness, grief, emptiness, and collapse. But this falling apart is holy. It breaks down ingrained false beliefs. It's like the ego is naked for the first time, but it's real. And out of this darkness can come light. Not stolen light, but the soul's own fire. The birth again and the holy threshold. To be clear, the ghost mother is not your enemy. She is the doorway to you. She is a bad teacher, the fierce feminine face that tells you to wake up. When you have the courage to talk to her about it, not to blame her, but to take back your power, you enter freedom. Start living like an adult instead of a child who is trying to please everyone. Don't stand up against your mother. Instead, do it to respect what she never got to finish. You are not only healing yourself, you are freeing your ancestors. It is a breaking of the mental chain and a return to the soul. Wholeness, which is the greatest and most powerful gift of all, is what people who walk this path get in return. The mother inside, the quiet leader inside. The internal mother is a psychic force that rules over the vast structures of the unconscious. It is very quiet and has a lot of power. She doesn't yell, she rules. She doesn't hit, but she forms. Jung called this inner figure the internalized mother imago. It is a psychological echo of the mother figure that is buried so deeply in the unconscious that it can stay hidden for a lifetime. Even after the biological mother has died, moved away, or become estranged, the inner mother lives on. She is not just a memory. She is a living, independent complex that quietly writes how we think, feel, choose, and relate to others. She turns into the invisible queen of the inner kingdom and whispers into the soul of the adult what they took in, without question, as a kid. Right from the start, the mother or the person who stood in for her is the mirror through which we first saw ourselves. We could tell by her look, her tone, her hug, or her pulling away if she wanted to be with us or just tolerated us. Jung thought that these early memories are not just stored in the brain, but also become myths in the soul and form what he called the mother complex. This group of mental stars turns into the mother imago, a figure with emotional, symbolic, and mythical weight. The problem is that the imago isn't always right. It's not the mother as she really was, but the mother as we saw her when our minds were still developing and we were desperately trying to stay alive. If the inner mother was caring, aware, and dependable, she would become a source of self-worth and safety. She becomes a quiet saboteur if she is absent, rejecting, critical, or involved. This is a force that affects every relationship, risk, and dream, even if it is not seen. You are too much. You are not enough. Don't speak. Don't shine. Stay small. Stay safe. Jung warned that when a person thinks this voice is their own, they become slaves to a ghost because they mix up their inherited training with their own inner truth. Not insecurity, but the internalized criticism of a mother who withheld praise or used love as currency as a child. This is where the inner saboteur is born. The inner mother can show up as a disappointment echo, in order to give up on oneself to please others, or a quiet panic whenever we try to break out of roles we were given. When we're about to grow, her voice comes up, pulling us back into the old prison of self-doubt. Jung said that this inner figure is projected onto lovers, teachers, bosses, and friends when it is not made aware. Out of the blue, we start to see people not as they really are, but through the emotionally charged lens of a mother's unfulfilled desire. They are supposed to heal wounds they didn't make. We respond with too much anger, fear, or neediness. We want the dream of being picked, cared for, or accepted. Without realizing it, we keep attracting people who make us feel the same way we're trying to get away from. When the bad inner mother isn't dealt with, it acts as a filter on reality, which leads to confusion, disappointment, and emotional repetition. When the internal mother is at its worst, it turns into a mental vampire, not in a figurative or emotional way. She drains energy, stifles feelings, and dims the spark of creativity. This shows up as being constantly tired, emotionally flat, afraid to make big decisions, or unable to make up their minds without feeling guilty. The person feels frozen, like they are living but not connected to life. Jung saw this as a kind of inner colonization in which the soul is no longer free, but is controlled by a frozen picture from the past. In spite of this, we stay loyal, wounded, yes, but loyal. We hold on to the idea of her even if she hurt us or was cold or mean. We think that if we stay small, obedient, and hurt enough, we might finally win her love. Jung called this a sad illusion because the inner mother is not changing. She is not real. She is a permanent mark on my mind. It doesn't matter how much we change to win her love. We only end up giving up on ourselves more. Jung said that we need to separate ourselves consciously from the inner picture that holds our soul hostage, not from our physical mother. This means calling the mother complex what it really is. It means facing your inner self directly, which you can do through active imagination, inner conversation, dreams, and rituals that are symbolic. We have to let the feelings that have been pushed down, rage, loss, betrayal, and longing rise. We take back the voice we hid, the limits we were afraid to set, and the power we gave up in order to stay alive. This separation is not a sign of rebellion. It is the holy right to be a self and not a shadow. It is important to take back the good parts of the mother archetype, which includes the inner nurturer, guardian, and creator. This doesn't come from fantasy or denial. It comes from building a new relationship with yourself that is based on sovereignty. You can do this by being kind to yourself, doing inner routines of care, connecting with mythical feminine symbols, and doing creative and physical practices. Over time, we start to care for ourselves and bring back parts of our minds that we had pushed away. These are acts of self-love and self-integration. It was Jung who said, "We do not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." This darkness lives in our inner mother, who is our silent dictator, our inherited voice, or our ancestral wound. We are bound until we face her, not with hate, but with truth. Once we do this, a sacred thing starts to happen. We stop living like kids, asking for approval, and start living like adults who carry the fire and the gentleness of a healed feminine within them. We don't wait to be picked anymore. We pick ourselves. Now we don't need to be loved. We love ourselves whole. There's a break in the spell of the inner mother, and a deeper self starts to rise, getting apart and having your own ego. Jung said that the symbolic split from the mother complex is one of the most holy and painful points in a person's mental life. This is not rejection. It's a fight with the archetypal pull that pulls the ego back into dependence, union, and unconscious loyalty. Jung warned that there can be no individuation, no true I, no fully aware life without this separation. The process is more of a deep spiritual rite than a social event. It's like a death and rebirth that happens behind everyday battles with boundaries, identity, and purpose. If you stay stuck in the mother imago, whether out of guilt, fantasy, or unconscious fear, you have to live behind a veil and act based on parts you have inherited, like the obedient child, the silent pleaser, or the internal orphan waiting to be seen. It was like a second birth to Jung. The first birth frees the body, and the second frees the soul. When these painful bonds are broken, the adult self starts to rise, not out of defiance, but out of respect for what needs to change. Still, many people fight this right. Even though the split is necessary, it is scary. Jung named the things that hold us together. The basic fear of annihilation, which means that we think that leaving each other will kill us. The guilt of betrayal, which means that we think that becoming our own person means being unthankful to the person who gave us life. The safety of familiarity, which means that even suffocation feels safer than freedom, and the cultural framework that values loyalty over authenticity. Jung made it clear that these are not just neuroses, but old archetypal currents in the collective unconscious that all people must face in order to become whole. If you don't separate yourself from your child, the child character takes over your adult ego. People who have perfect lives and jobs have an inner child that hasn't been healed and is still begging to be allowed to be real. These people have adult bodies, but they can't claim to be in charge of themselves. They pause to act, put off making choices, hold back their wants, and fear failing. Not because of what failing is, but because of what it might mean for the mother who is still alive in their minds. Jung thought this wasn't childhood, but prisoner's mind. True separation is the hero's journey, going down into the unconscious forest and facing the dragon of the mother's shadow, who used to guard and give but now eats. There is grief, confusion, anger, and the aching silence of ancestral memory all along the way. But if you don't answer this call, your life will be led not by your soul, but by fear. People who put things off risk falling into existential dread because they keep playing out the unresolved drama of the mother complex in every relationship, job, and unfulfilled desire. For the self to rise, the ego has to die. Jung called this event a psychic crucifixion because it killed the obedient child who thought that the only way to earn love was to be suppressed. The independent adult is born in its place, having a firm base, breathing, and ready to accept life as it is. Like all births, This one is messy and requires mourning for the youth that was never lived, the illusions that were broken, and the longings that are now faced instead of fed. There is nothing left after death, just a huge, scary quiet. Jung called this the holy space, which is the empty space in the mind left when a mother's voice is gone. It's only dangerous if we don't put gas in it ourselves. Her shadow comes back louder, more subtle, and more consuming if we don't claim this space with our own values, wants, and inner voice. So, separation by itself is not enough. What comes next must be creation, the building of a new inner system that is not borrowed or inherited but made from knowing yourself. The sovereign ego starts to wake up when this happens, when the person crosses the barrier. The ego that feels better is not this ego. This is the stable ego that feels rooted in oneself. That person who no longer acts to please or appear, but to show what they really think and feel. Because it is aligned, not out of fear or guilt, it makes choices. It doesn't get into relationships to be saved, but to share. This ego doesn't want to know the truth. It likes the unknown. It doesn't ask for praise. It respects its own voice. There is also a spiritual truth behind this process. Jung thought that the break from the mother complex was more than just a mental process. This is the moment when we leave the group, the safety of the mother, and enter the wild, holy land of the self. Not the ego's fantasy, but the deep inner guide. The self is the force that holds our plan and challenges us to follow it. Moving away from the mother complex doesn't mean leaving love. It means moving toward the truth. When we do this, we stop living our lives according to plots and start making our own meaning. Rites help this happen. Jung knew that lines had to be drawn around boundaries. We give shape to things that don't have one through art, dream work, writing in a journal, or holy movements. People say, the old is over. They talk to their mothers in their heads and say, I honor you, but I no longer belong to you. I belong to myself. They build altars out of courage, not stone, by setting limits, being honest, and taking deep breaths without fear of being punished. So, being apart is not betrayal. It's dedication to life. Becoming a vessel big enough to hold both the pain of the past and the beauty of the future is what it means. We'd be going around in circles of the same shadows without it. It is the first step on the path to the self. Jung said, man's task is to become conscious of the contents that press upward from the unconscious. Letting go is the first brave and beautiful step that opens a door in the maze of the mother complex. From the point of view of depth psychology, the psychological effects of an unhealed mother wound. Carl Jung once said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. This is most clear when you look at how an unhealed mother wound hurts you all the time. The mother complex doesn't go away when it's not being looked at. It spreads to different parts of the mind and changes beliefs, behaviors, feelings, and relationships in a subtle way. Jung warned that these are not just chance accidents or strange things that happen, but archetypal patterns that show up when unresolved energies are not brought to light yet. Now, let's look at 9 deeply rooted psychic symptoms that show you have an unhealed mother wound. These symptoms go beyond the personal and into the societal unconscious. 1. The inner critic and lots of doubts about oneself. One of the first signs is a voice inside your head that keeps telling you you're not good enough. This isn't normal self-doubt. It's the internalized shadow of the maternal voice, which is a psychic echo of times in your childhood when love was conditional, approval was withheld, or being vulnerable was punished. This voice, which sounds like reasoning or morality, hurts the ego and stops the new self from growing. Jung named this a complex, which is a part of the mind that acts like a parasite and feeds on efforts to grow. 2. A fear of independence and a strong desire to be dependent. These wounds make many people want freedom, but are afraid of it at the same time. When you ask them to stand on their own, they feel stuck. Making choices seems risky. Being successful feels like betrayal. Failing keeps an invisible bond with the picture of the suffering mother. Jung saw this as going back to the arms of the ideal mother, which meant giving up oneself for safety. 3. guilt, shame, and burdens passed down. When you try to separate from your mother, you may feel deep, almost holy shame. If I thrive, I betray her. If I grow, I leave her. This is archetypal and comes from primitive views that a child's ability to survive depends on how the mother feels. Jung saw this as holding the parent's unlived life, her regrets, limitations, and pain being passed down as a psychic seed. 4. Giving up on yourself and pleasing other people. People who have been hurt by conditional love often learn how to give up on themselves, betraying their wants to be loved. Limits feel dangerous, and saying no makes you feel bad. Jung saw this as putting on the mask of a loyal child because they were afraid of their inner mother's anger and didn't know how to stand up for themselves. 5. Bringing up the hurt in relationships. A lot of people find partners who are emotionally similar to the way their mother hurt them. Far away, critical, controlling, or suffocating. This repeat is a way of trying to fix things. Jung said that the unconscious brings up old traumas in the outside world, not to hurt, but to heal. We mistake repeat for fate and mix up love and pain unless we become aware of it. 6. What not enough really means. I'm not enough is a silent command that comes from being ignored or having standards that are too high. It shows up as perfectionism, overachieving, shame, and having trouble feeling joy without saying sorry. This was the cry of the inner child. Jung saw it. The child was still waiting to be seen and touched by love that never came. 7. Suppressing creativity and being afraid to speak out. The mother figure also makes things. When you're hurt, being creative and expressing yourself is scary. Jung said that when a consuming mother is in charge, a person fears that shining will make them be left alone or hurt. 8. Somatic symptoms and the body's call to get better. What the mind holds back, the body shows. Jung noticed that unresolved complexes often show up in the body as fatigue, worry, autoimmune diseases, and eating problems. These symptoms show the split between being cared for and being fed. And these are the body's metaphorical words asking for peace. 9. Spiritual alienation and a feeling of being empty inside. At the heart of the mother wound that hasn't healed is a void, a broken link to the feminine spirit, the great mother. The person may feel spiritually alone and be constantly seeking praise or ecstasy, but never being happy. Jung saw this as the soul's need to get back in touch with the archetypal mother, who he saw as the lost source of life, knowledge, and a sense of belonging. Last thoughts on part 5. People who have mother wounds don't show weakness. Instead, they send messages from their souls that something important has been lost, ignored, or hidden. Jung didn't teach us to blame our moms. Instead, he taught us to get back our projections, face what we've hidden, and take back who we are. Healing doesn't mean getting rid of the past. It means being able to hold on to it without being controlled by it. You could call it fate that your unconscious will run your life until you become aware of it. In the world of the mother wound, this is not a figure of speech, it is a plan. The way starts not with blaming, but with understanding. It doesn't start with rebelling, but with taking back what belongs to you. The kid who was never seen has to grow up and choose to see themselves as an adult. That's where the healing starts. That's where freedom starts. Embracing the shadow mother, a ritual for change on the inside. The meeting with the shadow mother isn't just therapeutic. It's an introduction into the deeper parts of your soul. Jung thought that this meeting was necessary for completeness. To heal the mother wound, you have to go deep into your subconscious and face the shadow of your mythological mother, which is as old as myths and as personal as your heartbeat. The negrito, or blackening, is the first step in the process of change and alchemy. It's the end of fantasy. For a child stuck in the mother complex, this is when the idealized veil falls away, showing the darker side of femininity that eats people up. Jung taught that this darkness is not bad, but holy, because it holds the lost fire of the self. Even though the shadow mother is scary, she holds the keys to freedom, inspiration, and power. Fear, anger, and sadness are like a buried treasure that she guards. To rebel and take back control, you must first be able to recognize her. It takes courage to see her lies, fears, need to possess or control, and pain that she projects onto the kid. As long as we hold on to the idea of the perfect mother who always gives and sacrifices for her children, we will stay stuck in childhood and not be able to face our anger and grief as adults. Abeyance hides anger, and anger hides grief. Jung said that these feelings are sacred energies or pieces of the soul that are being pushed away by shame and fear. We have to face the hurt, the hunger, and the sadness in order to heal. This sadness is not going backwards. It is coming back to life. We make room for the soul to come back through rituals, art, speech, or quiet tears. Jung's way is active imagination, which means talking to the shadow mother. Mind and unconsciousness can talk to each other through it. Picture her. Talk to her. Show your anger, sadness, or humiliation. Let the child who is left behind speak. When you do something honestly, something changes. The mother's grip loosens, and the inner child starts to stand up. The mind knows that it is its own thing. This fight is both a death and a birth. The child who is dependent dies, and the adult who is independent is born. This kind of death is often accompanied by nightmares, storms, and faith that falls apart. But Jung thought this was holy because it was like the hero going into the darkness to face the dragon. It's like the mother's shadow rises and then dies again. It's not the mother that dies, but the ego's thought. The soul's freedom is born, and the rejected feminine comes back. The shadow mother hurts not only the heart, but also the feminine parts of us, like our sensitivity, tenderness, joy, sensuality, and openness. We are afraid of these parts of ourselves when we fear the mother. But integration brings reunion, which means believing your inner knowing, showing how you feel without feeling bad about it, and loving and creating as a soul that has the right to exist. Jung thought this healing was especially important in cultures that push down the feminine figure. Rituals like art, dream work, and holy movements mark change. People say, the old is over. We respect the mother, but we tell her, I no longer belong to you. How compassion and humanization came to be. When the job is done, something amazing takes place. The mother, whether it's inside or outside the person, becomes human. Hurt and imperfect, yes, but human. Jung taught that real kindness comes from understanding, not from having to do something. It cleans the heart of anger and links us to the river of life. Last thoughts on part 6. To face the ghost mother is to go down into the cave, where there is both fear and freedom. You are giving your all to your truth, your soul, and even life itself. Jung called this process individuation, which means becoming whole. It starts with breaking apart, goes through sadness, and ends with rebirth. Jung said that there is no awareness without pain. But on the other side of the pain is freedom. The freedom to live from the soul, love from the fullness, and die as your own independent self. Forgiveness and freedom. In Jungian psychology, the goal is not to forget, but to be free. If it doesn't come easily from integration, forgiveness is just a shadow or an unnecessary badge. Jung didn't put forgiveness at the center. Instead, he stressed the importance of going inward and facing the wound fully, especially when it was made by someone who was supposed to hold us. If forgiveness comes up, it shouldn't be made up. It happens naturally and quietly as a result of soul recovery. It's the moment when you take back control and don't need outside help to solve your problems. If forgiveness comes about, it's a result, not a requirement. Forgiving someone too soon, whether out of guilt or because that's what society expects, becomes a way to avoid feeling angry, sad, or betrayed. This is the mother complex, which is an attempt to hide instead of heal. To truly heal, you have to remember the mother you never had, the control that held you back, and the years you gave up to believe in an illusion. It's not an attack on her. It's giving your soul freedom. When the mother is no longer stuck in myth, neither an angel nor a monster, and is seen clearly as she was, and is flawed, hurt, human, healing can begin. This humanization breaks down projections and psychological blocks that keep the self locked up. There may be a chance to forgive after the storm and the breakup, but it must still come from a free heart and not out of duty. How to go beyond forgiveness, taking back your power. Jung stressed that you don't have to forgive to be free. Putting things together is what's needed. The person brings the voice, feelings, anger, and softness that have been pushed away into aware life. Boundaries are not punishments. They are ways to keep you safe. They are mental lines that respect your own territory. To recreate the inner mother, you have to take her back as a voice of insight, softness, and care, no longer as a judge, but as a caring guide. It turns into a ritual to parent yourself, and rest, emotion, and creation are seen as holy. Jung saw this as the feminine principle coming back together, being as moving knowledge, the creative rebirth and healing across generations. The soul starts to bloom again once it is freed from her unconscious control. Words, images, and action come back to life. To make something is to take responsibility for life, acting out of wonder instead of hurt. Individuality helps us get ready to return to the group, not as broken kids, but as whole adults who can give love, presence, and wisdom. No longer reenactments of loss. Relationships are vessels of exchange. The purpose turns into a gift. Jung thought that healing the mother wound could happen across generations. It meant breaking the ancestral pattern, stopping the psychic inheritance of pain, and becoming a conscious ancestor. This would save the lineage and start a new tradition of wholeness, creativity, and freedom. Final thoughts. Some people believe that rebirth is not about becoming the person you were before the pain, but about becoming the person you were meant to be all along. It's a quiet revolt, not to defy, but to get back to the truth. Jung said strongly, "Your vision will become clear only when you look into your own heart. Who looks outside dreams? Who looks inside awakes." When you awaken after the mother wound, no one else is going to redo your story. You are now the author, and the page in front of you is blank. Share your thoughts in the comments if something in this message spoke to you, even if it was just one word that described how you felt. Have you met a soul that makes you feel like you're home? Or are you still going back to yourself on a holy path? No matter how unfinished your story is, it could be someone else's light in the dark, the sign they were looking for that they didn't expect. Share this movie with someone you care about who is struggling in silence with the false belief that love must hurt, that giving up oneself is the price of connection, or that they are not deserving of peace. For those who need to remember, real love doesn't want us to be small. For real union to happen, the soul does not have to be given up. The most important marriage is the one we make with ourselves. I'd like to invite you to subscribe and turn on alerts before you leave. Here we go deeper, looking at the secret structures of the mind, the whispers of the unconscious, and how each relationship shows how we are growing as people. Write down below a theme, question, or one that you'd like us to look into in future movies. Because of you, this space lives. We not only want to hear your voice, we need it. Thank you for coming to this movie and to the work you're doing inside yourself to remember who you really are. Remember that your soul will know when a right person comes along, not through fear, but through peace. Before that happens, let the connection you build inside you be the closest one. That's what the base is. That's the house. Things that are real come from being whole. I'll see you on the road until then.